The camera opens on a father's face, marked by exhaustion and disbelief. Behind him, scattered across the driveway, lie the shattered remains of what was once a child's most precious possession. This is not just a story about a broken toy. This is about sacrifice, betrayal, and the moment when family bonds are tested to their absolute limits. What happens when the vacation you've dreamed of for years is traded for your child's happiness, only to watch that happiness destroyed in a single afternoon by the very people who should protect it? Stay until the end, because what this father did next shocked everyone who knew him, and the family gathering that followed became one nobody would ever forget. Michael Henderson had been planning the Hawaii trip for 3 years. Every overtime shift at the auto repair shop, every weekend spent fixing neighbors' cars for extra cash, every coupon clipped and penny saved had one purpose. 2 weeks on Maui with his wife Sarah and their 8-year-old son, Danny. The resort was booked, the flights confirmed, the snorkeling excursions reserved. But life, as Michael had learned in his 42 years, rarely follows the script we write for it. Danny had been born with a congenital heart condition that required multiple surgeries before he turned 5. The medical bills had drained their savings, turned their credit cards into monthly reminders of debt, and transformed the Henderson household into a place where dreams were carefully rationed. Yet Danny never complained. He never asked for the latest gaming console or expensive sneakers. He had one wish, spoken quietly on his 8th birthday, as he watched older kids racing custom go-karts at the local track. "Dad, do you think I could ever have something like that? Just to ride around our street?" Michael saw the longing in his son's eyes, the same eyes that had looked up at him from a hospital bed too many times. That night, he sat with Sarah at their kitchen table in their modest Cleveland home, where the October wind rattled the windows and the refrigerator hummed its familiar off-key tune. "He's never asked for anything," Michael said, his calloused hands wrapped around a coffee mug. "Not once, not after everything he's been through." Sarah knew what her husband was thinking before he said it. 23 years of marriage had given her that gift, or perhaps that curse. "The Hawaii money," she whispered. Michael nodded slowly. "I can build him something incredible, custom, safe enough for his condition, something that's his." The decision wasn't easy, but it was unanimous. They would postpone Hawaii, maybe next year, maybe the year after. But Danny's smile couldn't wait another 3 years. For weeks, Michael researched every aspect of go-kart construction. He read forums where racing enthusiasts debated engine specifications and safety features. He watched videos of fathers building vehicles for their children. He consulted with Danny's cardiologist about physical limitations and safety requirements. This wasn't going to be just any go-kart. This was going to be a testament to what a father's love could build when money was limited but determination was not. The Henderson family lived in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone else's business. Their street, lined with maple trees that turned brilliant colors each fall, was the kind of place where kids still played outside until the streetlights came on. Houses built in the 1960s stood shoulder to shoulder, their vinyl siding and chain-link fences telling stories of working-class families who believed in home ownership and hard work. Michael's auto repair shop was a 20-minute drive through Cleveland's east side, past the remnants of factories that once employed thousands, through neighborhoods trying to reinvent themselves. He had worked there for 18 years, building a reputation for honest work and fair prices. His hands bore the scars of that honesty, the burns and cuts that came from fixing what others said couldn't be fixed. Sarah worked part-time at the public library, a job that allowed her to be home when Danny got off the school bus. The schedule was perfect for their family, even if the pay barely covered groceries. They had learned to live on less, to find joy in small victories, to measure wealth not in bank accounts but in moments of connection. The vacation fund had been Sarah's idea. 3 years earlier, sitting on their back porch on a summer evening while Danny played in the yard, she had said, "We should go somewhere that doesn't look like this, somewhere warm in the winter." Hawaii had seemed impossibly distant, both geographically and financially, but they had started anyway, $10 here, $20 there. Tax refunds went into the fund, birthday checks from relatives, the occasional bonus from Michael's shop when they had a particularly good month. Slowly, impossibly, the fund grew. By October, they had $4,800 saved, enough for flights, a modest hotel, rental car and spending money, enough for memories that would last longer than any material possession, enough for Danny to see the ocean, to feel sand between his toes, to experience a world beyond Cleveland's grey winters and modest summers. But that night at the kitchen table, watching his wife's face as they made the decision together, Michael felt something shift. The vacation would wait. It had to. Because Danny's question hadn't just been about a go-kart, it had been about whether he deserved something special, whether his life was valuable enough for dreams of his own. "I'll start this weekend," Michael said. "I'll build him something safe, something perfect." Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. "He's lucky to have you." "We're lucky to have him," Michael corrected. "After everything, we're lucky he's here at all." The unspoken memory hung between them. The surgeries when Danny was 3, then 4, then 5. The nights in hospital rooms, watching monitors, praying for steady heartbeats. The medical bills that had forced them to refinance their house. The fear that lived in every parent whose child's heart didn't work quite right. That constant awareness that life was fragile and could be lost in a moment. Danny had survived, thrived even. His doctors called him their miracle patient, the boy who refused to let his condition define his childhood. He played carefully, lived joyfully, and never once complained about what he couldn't do. He adapted. He found ways. He smiled through everything. He deserved this go-kart. He deserved to feel the wind on his face, to have something that was entirely his, to know that his dreams mattered enough for sacrifice. The next morning, Michael began making calls. He knew a supplier in Detroit who dealt in racing kart frames. The conversation was straightforward. "I need something I can modify for a child, 8 years old, lightweight, needs maximum safety features." The supplier, a gruff man named Tom who Michael had met at trade shows, understood immediately. "Medical condition. Heart. He's doing well, but I'm not taking chances." "I've got something. Frame solid, designed for junior racing but never used. I can give you a good price. For the kid." That was how it started. One phone call led to another. A frame from Detroit. An engine from a lawn equipment dealer in Akron who owed Michael a favor for fixing his son's truck. Wheels and tires from a go-kart track that was upgrading their fleet. Each piece acquired through Michael's network of contacts, through favors called in and deals made, through the invisible economy of working-class men who helped each other when they could. The Cleveland autumn was particularly beautiful that year. The maple trees on their street turned shades of red and gold that seemed almost artificial in their intensity. Danny would come home from school and immediately ask about the go-kart's progress. "Can I see it yet?" "Not yet, buddy. It's not ready." "Will it be fast?" "It'll be perfect," Michael promised. "That's better than fast." The garage became Michael's sanctuary and his workshop. After dinner each evening, he would kiss Sarah, ruffle Danny's hair, and disappear into that space where possibilities took shape. The concrete floor was always cold, even with a space heater running. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made detailed work difficult. But Michael didn't mind. This was his cathedral, and he was building something holy. The go-kart frame arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in early November. Tom from Detroit had delivered it himself, driving the 3 hours because, as he said, "I want to see the kid's face when it's done. Take pictures." Michael unwrapped the frame in his driveway. Danny watching from the porch, bouncing with excitement despite Sarah's hand on his shoulder, cautioning patience. "Can I touch it?" "Not yet, buddy. Let Dad inspect it first." The frame was perfect, steel tubing, professionally welded, with mounting points for engine, seat and steering column. It was raw and unfinished, just a skeleton waiting for life to be breathed into it. Michael ran his hands over every weld, every joint, checking for weaknesses he knew wouldn't be there, but checking anyway. This frame would carry his son. It had to be perfect. That night, he began the first modifications. The original design had the seat mounted low, designed for speed and aerodynamics. Michael raised it 6 inches, prioritizing visibility and ease of entry over performance. He welded additional support bars, creating a roll cage that would protect Danny without making the cart look like a prison. Each weld had to be perfect. Each measurement had to be exact. Sarah would bring him coffee around 9 o'clock each evening, standing in the garage doorway watching him work. "You should sleep," she would say. "Soon," he would reply. "Just want to finish this section." The engine installation took a full week. The motor itself was simple, a single-cylinder 4-stroke engine designed for lawn equipment, but powerful enough to propel a small cart. Michael modified the throttle linkage, installing a governor that would limit the top speed to 15 miles per hour, fast enough to be exciting for an 8-year-old, slow enough to be safe for a child with a heart condition. He tested the governor 17 times, using different weights to simulate Danny's size, making micro-adjustments until he was satisfied that the speed limiter was fail-safe. He installed a kill switch on the steering wheel, bright red, easily accessible. Another kill switch on a lanyard that would attach to Danny's wrist, so if he fell off, the engine would die immediately. Safety wasn't an afterthought. It was the foundation of everything. The steering system came next. Michael sourced a rack and pinion setup from a supplier in Columbus, then modified it for smaller hands. He adjusted the gear ratio so that turning the wheel required minimal effort, so that Danny's arms wouldn't tire during longer rides. He installed rubber bushings to absorb shocks, protecting Danny's heart from jarring impacts. November became December. The Cleveland weather turned harsh, snow falling in thick blankets that covered the driveway and made the garage even colder. Michael worked through it, his breath visible in the air, his hands aching from the cold even with work gloves. The space heater could only do so much against Ohio's winter. The custom paint job was the most challenging part. Michael had never considered himself an artist, but for this he would learn. He bought automotive paint in metallic blue, Danny's favorite color since he could express an opinion. He sketched designs on paper, showing them to Danny at breakfast. "What about lightning bolts?" Danny's eyes lit up. "Like I'm going super fast?" "Exactly like that." Michael watched YouTube tutorials at 2 in the morning, learning about proper sanding techniques, primer application, paint layering, and clear coat finishing. He practiced on scrap metal until his lightning bolts looked professional, dynamic, like they were moving even when standing still. The actual painting took place over a weekend in mid-December. He moved the cart frame into the basement where it was warmer and the air was still. Sarah kept Danny occupied upstairs, baking cookies, watching movies, anything to keep him from sneaking downstairs to peek. Michael sanded the frame until his arms ached. Applied primer, sanded again, applied the base coat of metallic blue, 3 thin layers with drying time between each. The color was perfect, deep and rich, catching light like water. Then came the lightning bolts, silver and white, hand-painted with brushes that cost more than Michael wanted to admit spending. Each bolt took hours, the lines having to be perfect, the shading right, so they appeared 3-dimensional. The clear coat went on last, 3 more layers, each one making the paint gleam like it was wet. When it was finally done, hanging on the frame under the basement lights, it looked professional. It looked like something that cost thousands of dollars. It looked like love made visible, Sarah came downstairs after Danny was in bed, carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Oh, Michael," she whispered, seeing the cart. "It's beautiful." "He deserves beautiful," Michael said. "He deserves everything." The final weeks before Christmas were spent on details. Michael installed a custom seat, padded with foam and covered in vinyl. He built a dashboard from aluminum sheet, installing a speedometer and a fuel gauge. He added LED lights, front and rear, so Danny could be seen easily. He installed a horn, because what kid doesn't want a horn? The 4-point safety harness came from a racing supply company designed for children, the straps adjustable as Danny grew. Michael installed it himself, testing the buckles hundreds of times, making sure they were secure but easy enough for small hands to operate. The windshield was the last addition. Michael cut it from polycarbonate, the same material used in safety glasses, virtually unbreakable. He shaped it to deflect wind away from Danny's face, mounting it securely but with enough flex to absorb impacts without shattering. On Christmas Eve, with Danny finally asleep after hours of excitement, Michael and Sarah moved the completed go-kart into the garage, covering it with a tarp. Michael stood back, looking at the shape beneath the cover, and felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Pride, yes, but something more. Completion, purpose, the knowledge that he had built something that mattered, that would bring joy, that represented the best of what he could offer his son. 3 years of Hawaii, Sarah said softly, standing beside him. "Worth every sunset we didn't see," Michael replied. "Every beach we didn't walk, every tropical drink we didn't order. All of it worth this." Christmas morning arrived with fresh snow and Danny's screaming excitement. Michael led his son outside, Sarah filming on her phone, both parents grinning at Danny's confusion about why they were going to the driveway in pajamas and winter coats. "What are we doing out here?" "Close your eyes," Michael instructed. He positioned Danny in front of the tarp-covered shape, Sarah flanking one side, Michael the other. "Okay, open them." Michael pulled the tarp away. For a moment, Danny just stared. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. His eyes went wide, wider than seemed physically possible. He looked at the cart, at his father, at his mother, back at the cart. Is this really... Is it mine?" "Really, really yours, buddy," Michael said, kneeling beside his son. "Happy birthday, early Christmas, and every holiday I might forget for the next 10 years. All rolled into one." Danny's scream of joy echoed through the entire neighborhood. Neighbors opened doors, peered out windows, smiled at the sound of pure childhood happiness. Danny ran his small hands over every surface, touching the lightning bolts, the steering wheel, the seat, the horn, unable to believe any of it was real. "Can I drive it right now?" "Let's wait until the street is plowed," Michael laughed, "but soon, very soon." That afternoon, after the snow had been cleared, Danny put on his custom helmet, also painted metallic blue with matching lightning bolts. Also a surprise. Michael showed him how the controls worked, how to start the engine, how to brake, how to use the kill switches. "Safety first, always," Michael emphasized. "This is fast enough to be fun, but I built it to keep you safe. If you ever feel scared or unsure, just hit this red button. Everything stops." Danny nodded solemnly, understanding the trust being placed in him. His first drive was tentative, just up and down the driveway, his parents walking alongside. But quickly, confidence grew. By evening, he was driving the length of their street, waving at neighbors who came out to watch, his laughter carrying on the cold December air. For 3 months, that go-kart was Danny's entire world. Every day after school, weather permitting, he would carefully don his helmet and drive. Their street became his racetrack, the familiar terrain transformed into something magical. Neighbors learned his schedule, would wave from porches, smile at the sight of the small boy in his custom ride living his best life. Other kids would watch with envy, would ask for rides. Danny would sometimes let them sit in the stationary cart, would explain the features, but never let anyone else drive. This was his, earned through his father's sacrifice, precious beyond measure. The Henderson household settled into a new rhythm. Danny's medical appointments continued, regular checkups to monitor his heart condition, but the doctors noted improvements. Exercise, even gentle exercise like driving the cart and the walking he did around the neighborhood showing it off, was strengthening his cardiovascular system. He was healthier, happier, more confident. Michael would watch from the porch, Sarah beside him, as their son lived the dream they had built him. The Hawaii vacation seemed distant now, almost abstract. This was real. This was happening. This was worth everything. But life, as Michael had learned, rarely lets happiness exist without testing it. Memorial Day weekend arrived with the promise of warm weather and family obligations. Sarah's sister, Jennifer, called on a Tuesday evening in mid-May, her voice carrying that particular tone of cheerful command that Sarah had learned to recognize over 40 years of sisterhood. "You're coming to the Memorial Day barbecue, right? It's been too long since we've all been together." Sarah glanced at Michael, who was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table, already sensing where this conversation was heading. "Of course. What can we bring?" "Just yourselves. And oh, you should bring Danny's little car. Tyler and Mason have been dying to see it. They talk about it constantly." Michael's head came up from the newspaper, his expression immediately cautious. "I don't know if that's a good idea, Jennifer. The cart means a lot to Danny and—" "Oh, don't be silly," Jennifer interrupted, her voice taking on that edge of dismissiveness that always made Sarah's shoulders tense. "They're family. They'll be careful. Besides, what's the point of having something like that if you can't share it?" After Sarah hung up, Michael expressed his concerns more directly. "I don't trust this," he said, folding the newspaper with more force than necessary. "Tyler and Mason, they're rough with everything. Remember last Thanksgiving when they broke Danny's handheld game? Jennifer just laughed it off." "They're boys," Sarah said, though her voice lacked conviction. "They play rough sometimes, but they wouldn't deliberately destroy something. It's not about deliberate. It's about respect. Those kids don't respect other people's things because they've never had to. Everything they want just appears." Sarah sat down across from her husband, choosing her words carefully. "Danny would be crushed if we said no when his cousins asked. You know how much he wants them to like him." This was the truth that hurt most. Danny idolized Tyler and Mason, despite their consistent disinterest in their younger cousin. They were older, cooler, living in a bigger house with more toys and more freedom. Danny wanted their approval the way plants want sunlight, desperately and without logic. "1 hour," Michael finally conceded. "We stay for 1 hour, let them see the cart, and then we leave before anything can happen." But they both knew that wasn't how family gatherings worked, especially at Jennifer's house. Memorial Day. Monday arrived sunny and warm, the kind of May day that promised summer was finally arriving. Danny was vibrating with excitement as Michael loaded the go-kart into the truck bed, securing it with straps he checked 3 times, then 4. "Tyler and Mason are gonna love it, right, Dad?" "I'm sure they'll be impressed, buddy." The drive from their Cleveland neighborhood to Jennifer's home in Westlake took 40 minutes, passing through increasingly affluent suburbs where the houses grew larger and the lawns more manicured with each mile. Jennifer had married Robert 20 years ago, had moved steadily upward in both geography and social status, and seemed to measure her success by the distance between her current zip code and the working-class neighborhood where she and Sarah had grown up. Jennifer's home appeared at the end of a cul-de-sac, like something from a magazine. Modern architecture, all clean lines and expensive materials. The driveway could fit 6 cars. The lawn looked like it had been cut with scissors, each blade of grass the exact same height. Behind the house, visible from the street, a privacy fence enclosed what Danny called the backyard bigger than our whole street. Michael felt the familiar tightness in his chest that always came with these visits, the unspoken comparisons, the casual mentions of vacations and purchases that cost more than he made in a month. The way Jennifer looked at their truck, their clothes, their lives, with something between pity and judgment. "Remember," he said to Danny as they parked, "this cart is yours. If at any point you want them to stop using it, you say so. Your feelings matter." Danny nodded, but his attention was already on the house, where Tyler and Mason had emerged, both boys taller and broader than the last time they'd seen them. "There's my little nephew," Jennifer exclaimed, hugging Danny briefly before her attention shifted to the truck bed. "And there's the famous go-kart. Boys, come see." Tyler was 10 now, Mason 12, and they approached the cart with the kind of immediate possessive interest that made Michael's protective instincts flare. They circled it like predators, touching everything, their questions rapid and entitled. "How fast does it go? Can we drive it? Does it have gears? Why is it so small? Is this real metal or plastic? How much did it cost?" "It's built specifically for Danny," Michael explained, unloading the cart carefully onto Jennifer's perfect driveway. "The speed is limited for safety, and the controls are adjusted for his size and his medical condition." "Medical condition," Mason repeated, his tone making it sound like weakness rather than resilience. "What's wrong with him?" "Nothing's wrong with him," Michael said, his voice hardening slightly. "He has a heart condition that requires certain precautions. This cart is designed with those in mind." "Can we try it?" Tyler asked, not really asking at all, already moving toward the driver's seat. Danny, desperate to please, nodded eagerly. "Sure, I can show you how. Dad taught me everything." Michael's stomach tightened, but Sarah's hand on his arm was gentle but firm. "Let the boy have this," her touch said. "Let him feel included. Let him feel like he belongs." The backyard was everything their modest yard wasn't. An in-ground pool with a waterfall feature sparkled in the sun. An outdoor kitchen with a built-in grill, refrigerator and prep area gleamed with stainless steel. The patio was stamped concrete, designed to look like stone, sprawling across what seemed like an acre. Perfect flower beds, perfect trees, perfect everything. Robert was manning the grill, wearing an apron that said "Grill Master," and holding tongs like a weapon. Jennifer's friends were scattered around the space, other affluent couples with their perfect children, all of them radiating the kind of casual wealth that came from never having worried about money. "Michael, Sarah," Robert called out, "grab a drink from the cooler, make yourselves at home." Making themselves at home had never been possible here. This wasn't home. This was a performance of success, and Michael and Sarah were the audience meant to appreciate how far Jennifer had climbed. Danny was already explaining the cart's features to Tyler and Mason, his voice eager and proud. Michael tried to relax, tried to let his son have this moment of connection with his cousins, but something in his gut kept twisting, warning him that this was a mistake. "Boys, be careful," Jennifer called out as Tyler climbed into the driver's seat, but her attention was already shifting back to her conversation with Sarah, discussing the European vacation they were planning for August. Paris, Rome, Barcelona. 3 weeks, first class. The words floated across the patio like foreign currency, valuable and unreachable. Michael positioned himself near the cart, watching closely as Tyler familiarized himself with the controls. Danny stood beside his father, coaching his older cousin. "The brake is here and you turn it on with this key, and the red button stops everything if you need it, and—" Tyler started the engine, cutting off Danny's instructions. The cart lurched forward, Tyler already pushing it harder than necessary. Michael started to call out, to remind him about the speed limit and the careful handling, but Tyler was already accelerating down the long driveway toward the street. The cart responded exactly as designed, governed at 15 miles per hour. To Michael, watching from the patio, it looked appropriately paced. To Tyler, accustomed to video games and simulation rides that promised adrenaline, it was disappointingly slow. "This is boring!" Tyler yelled back. "It's so slow!" He deliberately drove into Jennifer's carefully maintained flower beds, the wheels churning through mulch and crushing petunias. The rooster tail of dirt that sprayed behind the cart spattered across the custom paint job Michael had spent hours perfecting. Tyler laughed, delighted by the destruction. Michael started forward, but Danny's hand grabbed his arm. "It's okay, Dad. It's just dirt. We can wash it." The words broke Michael's heart. 8 years old, and already Danny had learned to minimize his own hurt to keep peace with people who didn't respect him. Tyler brought the cart back, dirt covering the blue metallic paint, and climbed out without ceremony. Mason's turn. Maybe he can make it go faster. Mason was bigger than his brother, 12 years old and already showing signs of the athletic build that came from expensive sports leagues and personal trainers. He squeezed into the seat, designed for an 8-year-old, his weight immediately straining the suspension Michael had calibrated so carefully. "How do I make this thing go faster?" Mason demanded. "You don't," Michael said firmly. "The speed is set for safety. It's not designed for someone your size." "Whatever," Mason said, starting the engine. What happened next would replay in Michael's mind for months, each detail sharp enough to draw blood. Mason, frustrated by the speed limitation, began driving aggressively. He slammed the accelerator, hit the brakes hard, slammed the accelerator again. The cart lurched and skidded, the wheels leaving black marks on Jennifer's perfect stamped concrete. He drove it toward the pool fence, turning at the last second, the front wheel assembly impacting the metal post with a sickening crunch. "Mason, be more careful," Jennifer called out, but her tone was amused rather than concerned, as if watching boys be destructive was charming rather than problematic. The other adults watched with idle interest. Kids being kids, their expressions said. Boys being rough as boys do. None of them moved to intervene. None of them seemed to register that what was being damaged represented 3 years of savings and 2 months of skilled labor. Danny stood beside Michael, his smile growing smaller with each impact, each scrape, each laugh that celebrated destruction rather than creation. His hands were clenched into small fists, his whole body tense, but he said nothing. He had learned early that his feelings were less important than keeping peace. "Dad," he finally whispered, tugging his father's shirt. "Can we tell them to stop?" "Soon, buddy," Michael said, though the dark thing growing in his chest was getting harder to contain. "Let's give it a few more minutes." Those few more minutes proved catastrophic. Tyler and Mason, bored with individual turns, decided to ride together. Both of them, combined weight at least 200 pounds, far exceeding the cart's design specifications. They squeezed into the seat together, fighting over the controls, before Mason overpowered his younger brother and took the steering wheel. Michael saw what was about to happen a second before it did, saw the trajectory, saw the speed, saw the impact point. "Stop!" he shouted, already moving forward. But it was too late. Mason accelerated hard, the overloaded cart struggling under their combined weight, steering erratically as both boys grabbed the wheel. They were arguing, laughing, treating the whole thing like a game. The cart veered wildly left, then right, then left again, heading directly toward Robert's vintage barbecue station. The custom-built structure was Robert's pride, constructed from stone and stainless steel, featured in a local architecture magazine. It had cost more than Michael's truck, more than the go-kart, more than everything in Michael's garage combined. The impact was spectacular and horrible. The cart hit the stone base at maximum governed speed, 15 miles per hour, but with 200 pounds of boy behind it. The front end crumpled like paper. The custom hood that Michael had shaped by hand and painted with such care split completely in two, the lightning bolts torn apart mid-strike. The windshield, the polycarbonate shield that was supposed to be virtually unbreakable, shattered into fragments. The steering wheel, wrenched by impact, snapped at its mounting point. The roll cage bent. The front wheel assembly broke completely off, metal screaming as welds failed. Worst of all, the engine mount cracked, and oil began pooling on the perfect concrete like dark blood, spreading in a slow circle that seemed to grow with each heartbeat. Tyler and Mason emerged laughing, completely unharmed, high-fiving each other like they had accomplished something impressive rather than destroyed something precious. They walked away from the wreckage without looking back. The backyard grew silent. Every conversation stopped. Every face turned toward the impact site, toward the destroyed go-kart, toward Michael walking slowly toward what remained of 2 months of work and 3 years of sacrifice. Each step felt heavy, weighted with disbelief and rage and grief, all mixed together. Michael knelt beside the wreckage, his hands moving over the broken pieces, each one a memory. This piece had taken an evening to shape. That component had required 3 tries to get right. The paint job had taken a weekend. The engine mount had been welded and tested and reinforced. All of it destroyed in 20 minutes while people stood around and watched. Danny appeared beside his father, his young face struggling to process what had happened. No tears, not yet, just shock, just the slow realization that the thing he loved most, the thing his father had sacrificed everything to build, was gone. Michael stood up slowly, very slowly. He turned to face the assembled family and friends, all of them frozen in various poses of awkward discomfort. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but everyone heard every word. That wasn't a toy. Robert opened his mouth to respond, but Michael held up one hand. That was 3 years of overtime. That was every hour I could have spent sleeping or with my son. That was a Hawaii vacation for my family, traded so my boy could have one thing that was completely his. That was 2 months of nights in a cold garage, learning skills I didn't have, making something perfect because he deserved perfect. And your sons destroyed it in 20 minutes while you all stood around and watched like it was entertainment. The silence was absolute. Jennifer found her voice first, defensive and sharp. Michael, you're overreacting. It's a go-kart. You can fix it. That's what you do, right? Fix things, Robert will pay for parts. It's fine. It's not fine, Michael said, his voice still quiet, but carrying an edge that made several people step back. And some things can't be fixed. Some things once broken are just broken. He turned to Danny, whose eyes were now swimming with tears. The boy was desperately trying to hold back, trying to be strong, trying not to make a scene even though his world had just shattered. Get in the truck, buddy, we're going home. But we haven't eaten yet, Sarah started, torn between loyalty to her husband and obligation to her sister, between family peace and family justice. Maybe we should then stay, Michael said, looking at his wife with eyes that held no anger toward her, only clarity. Stay, eat, enjoy the party, but Danny and I are leaving. Sarah looked at her sister, at the spread of expensive food on tables she could never afford, at the pool and the perfect lawn and the barbecue station that hadn't even been scratched by the impact that destroyed the go-kart. Then she looked at her husband and son, at the destroyed vehicle, at the family that had watched it happen without intervening, without caring, without seeing the value in what was being destroyed. "I'll get my purse," she said quietly. They loaded the destroyed cart back into the truck bed, its pieces rattling like broken bones against the metal bed. Each sound was a reminder, each movement an inventory of loss. The hood in 2 pieces, the windshield in fragments, the steering wheel detached, the engine leaking oil, the front wheel assembly bent beyond repair, the paint job scratched and dented and ruined. Michael worked methodically, his movements controlled, placing each piece carefully as if it still mattered, as if treating the remains with respect would somehow honor what it had been. No one helped. Jennifer stood with her arms crossed, radiating offense. Robert was already back at his grill, flipping burgers, the incident apparently over in his mind. Tyler and Mason had disappeared into the house, probably to play video games, already forgotten about the destruction they had caused. The other guests had returned to their conversations. The awkward moment passed, the working-class family's drama no longer entertaining enough to hold attention. Danny sat in the truck's front seat between his parents, his small hand in his father's larger one, watching the neighborhood pass by as they drove away. The houses got smaller, the lawns less perfect, the cars older. They were driving home, back to their place in the world, back to where things made sense, even if they were less shiny. "I'm sorry, Dad," Danny finally whispered, his voice breaking. "I should have told them no. I should have stopped them. It's my fault." Michael pulled the truck over to the side of the road. Right there, in the middle of the drive home, he stopped and turned to his son. "Listen to me, buddy. Listen carefully. This is not your fault. Not one bit of this is on you. You wanted to share something you loved with family. That's generous. That's kind. What happened is on them, not you. Do you understand?" Danny nodded, but tears were falling now, sliding down his cheeks faster than he could wipe them away. "But it's broken. Your work is all broken." "Things can be rebuilt," Michael said, pulling his son into a hug. "What matters is that you're okay. That's all that's ever mattered." The rest of the drive home was quiet, each of them processing the afternoon in their own way. Sarah stared out the window, her jaw tight, clearly replaying conversations with her sister, years of small slights and dismissals that had accumulated like interest on a debt. Michael focused on driving, his hands steady on the wheel, his mind already moving past rage into something colder and more permanent. Decision. Danny dozed against his mother's shoulder, exhausted by emotion, his hand still clutching his father's sleeve like an anchor. That night, after Danny was finally asleep in his bed, Michael sat in his garage, surrounded by the tools that had built the dream, and the pieces of that dream now scattered on his workbench. He had laid everything out carefully, inventorying the damage, understanding what was broken beyond repair and what might be salvaged. The frame was bent, but possibly repairable. The engine was damaged, but functional. The wheels could be replaced, but the custom hood, split in two, would need to be completely rebuilt. The windshield would need to be recut. The steering assembly would need to be fabricated from scratch. The paint job, months of learning and practicing, would need to be redone entirely. Hundreds of hours, thousands of dollars in new parts, all to restore something that had been destroyed in minutes by children who didn't value it and parents who didn't care. Sarah brought him coffee and sat beside him on an overturned bucket, the same bucket he had used as a seat while painting the lightning bolts, back when the project was about creation rather than destruction. "Jennifer called," she said quietly, her voice carefully neutral. Michael looked up, waiting. "She wants to pay for the repairs." Robert offered to write a check. "Whatever it costs." "I don't want their money," Michael said, the words immediate and certain. "I know," Sarah said. "I told her that. She also said—" Sarah paused, clearly struggling with whether to continue. "She said maybe we were being dramatic, that we're teaching Danny to be too precious about material things, that kids break toys, and that's normal." Michael laughed, but there was no humor in it. Only a bitter recognition of how fundamentally Jennifer misunderstood everything. "Material things," he repeated. "That cart was Hawaii. It was sunsets and beach walks and umbrella drinks. It was 14 days of not being cold, not worrying about bills, just being a family somewhere beautiful. It was every extra hour I worked for 3 years, and I traded it gladly for Danny's smile. They destroyed both in one afternoon." Sarah leaned her head against her husband's shoulder. "So what do we do?" Michael was quiet for a long time, his hands running over a piece of the custom hood, tracing the lightning bolt design that was now split down the middle, the silver paint scarred and scratched. "We rebuild," he finally said. "Not the cart, not right away, maybe not ever, but we rebuild what matters. I'm done teaching my son that he has to shrink himself to make others comfortable. I'm done pretending that family means accepting disrespect because we share blood. I'm done exposing him to people who don't value him." Sarah was silent, processing what her husband was saying, understanding the weight of the decision he was making. "Jennifer won't understand," she finally said. "I know," Michael said, "but Danny will. Someday, when he's older and faces his own difficult choices about who deserves his time and energy, Danny will understand that we chose him, that we always chose him." Over the next few days, Michael's phone rang repeatedly. Jennifer, angry and defensive. Jennifer's friends, offering unsolicited advice about forgiveness and family. Even Robert called once, his tone suggesting he was doing Michael a favor by addressing the situation at all. Michael let the calls go to voicemail. He listened to the messages once, then deleted them. Each one was a variation on the same theme, that he was overreacting, that accidents happen, that family should forgive and forget, that his working-class sensibilities were making him too attached to material possessions. None of them understood. None of them saw beyond the broken toy to what it represented. On the third day after the incident, Michael made a decision that surprised even himself. He created a fundraiser online, carefully writing out Danny's story. He included photos of the cart being built, of Danny's face on Christmas morning, of the destroyed remains after the Memorial Day incident. He wrote about the medical struggles, the sacrifices, the choice he had made to trade a vacation for his son's dream. But he wasn't asking for money to repair the go-kart. He was asking for help to finally take Danny to Hawaii. "I learned something important this weekend," he wrote in the fundraiser description. "I learned that some people will never value what matters to us, and that's okay. Their inability to see value doesn't diminish the worth of what we create and protect. I'm raising money not to fix what was broken by others' carelessness, but to pursue the dream I originally sacrificed. My son deserves that beach sunset. He deserves to feel sand between his toes and see the ocean that's been waiting 3 years. If you've ever made a sacrifice for someone you love, if you've ever had to choose between material possessions and emotional well-being, if you've ever struggled with setting boundaries with family, maybe this story resonates with you. Any amount helps. Even sharing this story helps. Thank you for reading." Sarah found him posting the fundraiser at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly. "People might judge. They might think we're begging." "Let them judge," Michael said, his finger hovering over the publish button. "I'm done caring what people think. I'm done measuring our worth by their standards." He clicked publish. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By morning, the fundraiser had raised $800. By afternoon, $2,000. By the end of the week, it had exceeded their original Hawaii fund by more than $1,000. Strangers from across the country sent messages of support, sharing their own stories of family betrayals and difficult choices. "This is exactly what I went through with my in-laws. Thank you for teaching your son that his feelings matter. You're a good father. Your son is lucky." Some family isn't worth keeping. Each message was a validation, a confirmation that what Michael felt wasn't wrong or petty or dramatic. He wasn't alone in understanding that respect and boundaries mattered more than shared DNA. Jennifer saw the fundraiser. Of course she did. Someone in the extended family made sure she knew about it, forwarding the link with commentary about how Michael was airing family business online and embarrassing everyone. She called Sarah directly, her voice tight with anger. "How could you let him do this? Everyone is talking about us. He's making us look like monsters." Sarah, who had spent 40 years managing her sister's feelings, trying to keep peace, minimizing her own needs to maintain family harmony, felt something shift inside her. "He didn't make you look like anything," she said quietly. "You did that yourselves. Your boys destroyed something precious and you laughed. You watched it happen and did nothing, and then you minimized it, called it an overreaction, said it was just a toy. That's on you. It was an accident. It was negligence, Sarah corrected. It was disrespect. It was a pattern of behavior that Michael and I have tolerated for years because family is supposed to forgive everything. But we're done. We're choosing our son over your comfort. You're choosing Michael's pride over family, Jennifer shot back. No, Sarah said, surprising herself with the clarity of her conviction. I'm choosing my son's well-being over your ego. There's a difference. She hung up. For the first time in her adult life, she hung up on her sister without worrying about the consequences, without immediately calling back to apologize, without minimizing her own feelings to restore peace. She found Michael in the garage, not working on the cart, but simply sitting with the pieces, processing, grieving, moving forward. I told Jennifer we're done, she said. I told her we're choosing Danny. Michael stood, pulled his wife into his arms, held her while she cried, releasing years of tension and obligation and guilt. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for choosing us. The fundraiser ultimately raised $6,200, more than enough for Hawaii, with money left over for activities and nicer accommodations than they had originally planned. The support came from people who understood that the story wasn't about a go-kart or a vacation. It was about priorities, about protecting what matters, about teaching children that their worth isn't determined by others' treatment of them. Michael made a decision about the destroyed go-kart. He would rebuild it, but not immediately. First, they would take Danny to Hawaii, give him the experience that had been deferred, show him that dreams could be adjusted, but didn't have to be abandoned. Then, when they returned, if Danny still wanted the kart rebuilt, they would do it together. Danny would learn every step, every skill, every technique. It would take longer, but it would be theirs together. 3 weeks later, Michael started a new project in the garage. Not a go-kart, but a shadow box to display the split hood with its broken lightning bolt design. He mounted it carefully, added a plaque that read, "Some things break. What matters is what we build next." He hung it in Danny's room, a reminder not of destruction, but of choices, of priorities, of the moment when his parents chose his worth over family obligation. Summer arrived with temperatures that made Cleveland feel tropical even without leaving Ohio. The fundraiser had closed at exactly $6,347, each contribution accompanied by messages that Michael printed out and kept in a folder. These from strangers who had faced similar choices, who had struggled with family boundaries, who had learned that sometimes love meant distance. Planning the Hawaii trip became a family project. Danny spread brochures across the kitchen table, his finger tracing beaches and snorkeling spots, his medical restrictions barely limiting the adventures available to him. Sarah found a resort with excellent reviews for accessibility and medical facilities nearby, just in case. Michael booked everything with the careful precision he applied to mechanical work. Every detail checked twice. They told almost no one about the trip. A few close neighbors who would collect their mail. Danny's doctor, who provided a letter documenting his condition and medication schedule, but not the extended family, not Jennifer, not the relatives who had witnessed the destruction and said nothing. The day before they left, Michael finally returned to the garage to address the destroyed go-kart. Danny stood beside him, 8 years old and somehow older than he had been 3 months ago. "What are we going to do with it, Dad?" Michael had been thinking about this question for weeks, weighing options, considering what would serve his son best. "We're going to rebuild it, but not now. Not until we get back from Hawaii. And when we do rebuild it, we're doing it together. I'm going to teach you everything I know. Every weld, every adjustment, every technique. You're going to build your own dream this time." Danny's eyes widened. "Really? I can help." "You'll do more than help. This will be your project. I'll guide you, but your hands will do the work. That way, no matter what happens to it, you'll know you created it. No one can take that from you. What if I mess it up? Then we'll learn from the mistake and fix it. That's what building things teaches us. Nothing comes out perfect the first time, but everything worth having is worth working for. They covered the cart pieces with a tarp, marking the project as paused rather than abandoned. Then Michael and Danny walked out of the garage together, closing the door on that chapter, ready for the next one. The flight to Maui took 11 hours with a layover in Los Angeles. Danny pressed his face against the window during landing, watching the island emerge from endless blue ocean, his excitement palpable enough to make nearby passengers smile. The resort was modest by Hawaiian standards, but to the Henderson family, it was paradise. Their room opened onto a balcony overlooking gardens that led to a beach where waves crashed in rhythms that seemed designed for peace. Danny ran from room to balcony to beach and back, unable to decide what to explore first, his energy limitless despite the travel exhaustion that made his parents move slowly. That first evening, they walked the beach together as the sun set, painting the sky in colors that seemed impossible, oranges and pinks and purples that defied description. Danny collected shells, examined tide pools, laughed when waves caught him by surprise and soaked his shorts. Michael and Sarah walked hand in hand behind their son, watching him experience the world they had worked so hard to give him. "This is what we traded the cart for originally," Sarah said quietly. "This moment right here." "And we got both," Michael replied. "Danny got his cart for 3 months of joy, and now we're here. We didn't lose anything. We gained perspective about what matters and who deserves our energy." Over the next 2 weeks, they explored the island at Danny's pace, gentle snorkeling in protected bays, where colorful fish seemed curious rather than afraid. A helicopter tour that showed the island from above, valleys and waterfalls that made Danny gasp with wonder. A luau where they ate kalua pork and watched fire dancers perform feats that seemed like magic. They visited Pearl Harbor, where Michael explained the history in age-appropriate terms, teaching Danny about sacrifice and courage and the cost of peace. They drove the road to Hana, stopping at waterfalls and fruit stands, eating banana bread that tasted like dessert, and swimming in pools that felt like secret worlds. Danny's health remained stable throughout the trip. His heart, strengthened by months of gentle exercise with the go-kart and blessed by genetics that favored resilience, handled the activities without incident. The doctors had been right. Controlled exercise and joy were the best medicine for his particular condition. On their final evening in Hawaii, they returned to the beach at sunset, the same spot where they had walked that first night. Danny was darker from the sun, confident from adventure, full of stories he would tell for years. "This was the best trip ever," he said, building a sandcastle while his parents sat nearby. "Even better than having the go-kart." "You can have both, buddy," Michael said. "We're going to rebuild it when we get home, remember?" "I know," Danny said, patting sand into shape. "But if I had to choose, I'd choose this. I'd choose being here with you and Mom. The cart was cool, but this is better." Sarah wiped tears she didn't want her son to see. Michael squeezed her hand, understanding that their 8-year-old had just articulated what they had been trying to teach him, that experiences with people who love you matter more than possessions, that memories outlast materials, that the best things in life can't be destroyed by careless hands. The flight home felt shorter somehow, even though it wasn't. They returned to Cleveland with sun-touched skin and full hearts, ready to face whatever came next. The garage was exactly as they had left it, the covered cart pieces waiting patiently. But Michael didn't rush to begin the rebuild. Instead, he printed the best photos from Hawaii, framed them, and hung them throughout the house. Physical reminders that the sacrifice had been worth it, that the difficult choice had led to something beautiful. Jennifer sent a text message 2 days after they returned. "Heard you went to Hawaii. Glad you got what you wanted." Sarah read the message, recognized the passive aggression wrapped in false civility, and deleted it without responding. She had spent enough of her life managing her sister's feelings. That time was over. 3 weeks after returning from Hawaii, Michael and Danny began the rebuild. The garage became their shared workspace, father teaching son the fundamentals of mechanics, engineering, and patience. Danny's small hands learned to use tools, to measure twice and cut once, to understand that quality work took time. The process was slower than when Michael had worked alone, but infinitely more rewarding. Danny made mistakes, learned from them, grew more confident with each completed step. The rebuilt cart would never be as perfect as the original, but it would be more meaningful because Danny had created it himself. They worked together 3 evenings a week, taking breaks when Danny got tired, celebrating small victories when a weld held or a measurement came out exact. Sarah would bring them snacks and coffee, watching her husband and son bent over the workbench together, teaching and learning, building more than just a vehicle. 4 months after starting the rebuild, on a crisp October evening that smelled of fallen leaves and coming winter, the go-kart was complete. It wasn't identical to the original. The paint job was simpler, the modifications less extensive. But it ran, and more importantly, Danny had built it. They tested it in the driveway, Danny driving slowly at first, then with growing confidence, his smile returning to the full wattage brightness it had lost on that Memorial Day afternoon. Neighbors came out to watch, to applaud, to celebrate the completion of something they had witnessed from the beginning. "How does it feel?" Michael asked when Danny finally stopped, breathless with joy. "It feels like mine," Danny said. "Really mine, because I made it." Michael understood then that the destruction had taught them all something valuable. The original cart had been a gift, precious because of the sacrifice it represented. But this rebuilt version was something more. Proof that what was broken could be repaired, that skills could be learned, that Danny himself was capable of creating value. The shadow box with the broken lightning bolt remained on Danny's bedroom wall, not as a reminder of loss, but as a marker of growth. Beneath it, Sarah had added another plaque with a quote she had found and felt captured everything. "We teach people how to treat us by what we accept." Life settled into a new rhythm. The Henderson family remained distant from Jennifer and Robert, sending polite cards at holidays but declining invitations to gatherings. Some family members criticized the distance, called it petty, suggested that Michael and Sarah were teaching Danny to hold grudges. But Danny thrived, his confidence grew, his health remained stable. He learned that his feelings mattered, that his parents would protect him, that love sometimes meant creating distance from those who couldn't respect boundaries. By the following summer, the fundraiser story had spread beyond their immediate circle. A local newspaper ran a feature about Michael's choice, the sacrifice and the boundary setting, the way one family had chosen emotional health over traditional family obligation. The article resonated with readers across the country, sparking discussions about family dynamics and the difference between forgiveness and acceptance. Jennifer sent one final message after the article was published. "I hope you're proud of yourself. You've destroyed this family over a toy." Sarah showed the message to Michael, who read it once and shook his head. "We didn't destroy anything," he said. "We protected what mattered. There's a difference." He was right. The family that mattered, the unit of 3 that had fought through medical crises and financial struggles and emotional tests, was stronger than ever. They had learned that family was defined not by blood, but by respect, not by proximity, but by protection, not by tradition, but by choice. The go-kart still sits in their garage, driven occasionally, but treasured always. The Hawaii photos still line their hallway. The fundraiser messages still fill a folder in Michael's desk. Each item is evidence of a choice made, a boundary set, a lesson learned. Danny is older now, entering his teenage years with the confidence of a child who knows he is valued. He still drives the go-kart sometimes, but he also helps his father with repairs on neighbors' cars, learning skills that will serve him throughout his life. He understands mechanics, yes, but more importantly, he understands himself. When friends ask about his family, Danny explains matter-of-factly that they don't see some relatives anymore. They didn't respect what was important to us, he says, with the clarity of someone who has been taught that boundaries are healthy. And that's okay. We choose to spend time with people who value us. It's a lesson that will serve him well throughout his life. This understanding that love sometimes means distance, that family obligations have limits, that protecting your peace is not selfish, but necessary. Michael occasionally thinks about that Memorial Day afternoon, about the sound of metal crumpling and oil spilling like blood. He thinks about the choice he made to leave the party, to set a boundary, to prioritize his son's emotional well-being over family expectations. He has never regretted it, not once, because that afternoon taught him something more valuable than any vacation or custom vehicle, that teaching his son to value himself, to protect what matters, and to walk away from those who don't respect his worth was the most important work he would ever do. That lesson was priceless, and unlike the go-kart, it could never be broken, never be destroyed by careless hands, never be diminished by others' inability to see its value. The Henderson family learned that some distances are worth the peace they bring, that boundaries are acts of love, that choosing yourself when others won't choose you is not selfish, but survival, and that the best inheritance you can leave a child is not material wealth, but the knowledge that they are worth protecting, worth defending, worth choosing above all others who would diminish them. That knowledge is what Michael and Sarah gave Danny. And it's the gift that will keep giving throughout his entire life, long after go-karts and vacations and family gatherings have faded into memory. Some things can be rebuilt, some distances are worth maintaining, and some choices, no matter how difficult in the moment, prove to be exactly right in retrospect. Michael and Sarah made the right choice. And every day, watching their son grow into a confident young man who knows his worth, they are reminded that protecting what matters is always worth the cost. Now we want to hear from you. Would you have reacted the same way Michael did? Was he right to leave the party and set those boundaries, or should he have handled it differently? Have you ever faced a similar situation where family crossed a line? Share your story in the comments below. We read every single one, and your experience might help someone else facing the same difficult choice. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next video. These real-life stories matter because they show us we're not alone in our struggles. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that make a difference. And before you go, check out the video recommendation appearing on your screen right now. Another powerful story about family, sacrifice, and the difficult choices we all face. Thank you for watching, and remember, some things are worth protecting, no matter the cost. Some boundaries are worth setting, no matter the backlash. And some choices, no matter how hard, are exactly what love looks like.